The paradox of war. Why do the richest countries spend billions on defense? War destroys cities, war devastates economies, war takes millions of lives. But there is a paradox that is rarely discussed. And as always, we will talk about things that others don't even think about. Some of the richest and most technologically advanced countries in the world became that way thanks to the arms race. Internet GPS. You use GPS and the internet every day, but they were created for nuclear war, satellite navigation, jet aviation. All these technologies came from military research. And here a strange question arises. Why do countries spend hundreds of billions of dollars on defense? And at the same time, they become the technological leaders of the planet. In a minute, you'll find out how one mistake destroyed an entire country in 6 weeks. Well, I'll give you a hint. It's France. Fear is the engine of progress. 1957. The world wakes up to news that changes history. The Soviet Union launched the first artificial Earth satellite, Sputnik 1. A small metal sphere, probably about the size of a beach ball. But its signal reaches the entire world. For the United States, it's just a shock. If a country can send a satellite into space, does that mean it can send a nuclear missile across the ocean? The answer to this fear was the creation of one of the most influential scientific agencies in history, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. This is where projects that would later change civilization would begin. It was the fear of the USSR that launched the agency that changed technology. The internet that wasn't supposed to exist. In the late 1960s, American engineers are discussing a troubling question. What will happen if a nuclear war breaks out and the central communication centers are destroyed? Will there be no more communication? Will the army lose control? Will the country be paralyzed? The solution turned out to be revolutionary, to create a network without a center. A network where information can travel along dozens of different routes. That's how the first experimental network appeared. It was called Arpanet. It connected only a few universities, but the engineers had no idea that they were creating the foundation of the future internet. Today, the internet shapes an economy worth trillions of dollars. But its birth began with preparations for nuclear war. The technology that leads us home. Imagine for a second that GPS disappears, airplanes lose navigation, cargo ships go off course, logistics collapse, services and taxis stop working, deliveries come to a halt. According to economists' estimates, the global economy could lose hundreds of billions of dollars a year. But originally, GPS was not created for drivers at all. The system was developed for the U.S. military. Its task was extremely simple: to know the exact location of ships, planes, and missiles. And today, GPS. It is used in logistics, aviation, agriculture, rescue services, and even in driverless cars. The world has become dependent on a technology that emerged thanks to military research. GPS was created for the military, and today the global economy depends on it. Pressure accelerates progress. There is one factor that dramatically accelerates the development of technology. It's called threat. When a nation faces the threat to its existence, an extraordinary transformation takes place. Governments start investing huge amounts of money in science. The best engineers receive funding and scientists are allowed to take risks. Projects that would have been considered too expensive in peacetime suddenly become a priority. It is during such periods that the fastest technological leaps occur. From the gates of military technologies to billion-dollar industries. Now pay attention, almost no one knows this fact. Drones. Originally, they were created for military reconnaissance. The idea was simple: to observe the battlefield without risking pilots' lives. But over time, technologies become cheaper and gradually move into the civilian economy. Today, drones are used for cinematography, agriculture, construction, rescue operations, and mapping. The global drone industry is valued at tens of billions of dollars and is growing every hour. But the most shocking story happened quite recently, and it changed Europe. What happens to countries that ignore their defense? History shows another side as well. When a state completely ignores its defense, the consequences are typical, catastrophic. In the 1930s, many European countries sharply reduced military spending. When World War II began, they were unprepared. Another example is Kuwait. In 1990, the Iraqi army led by Saddam Hussein began the invasion of Kuwait. The country was captured in 2 days. It was only liberated after an international operation during the Gulf War. The history of Ukraine. The history of Ukraine is often cited as an example of what can happen when a country underestimates a military threat for a long time. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine inherited a huge military infrastructure. There were 780,000 military personnel, thousands of tanks, hundreds of aircraft, and the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world on its territory. But the country's economy was going through a severe crisis. It was almost impossible to maintain such an army. In 1994, the Budapest Memorandum on Security Assurances was signed. Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in exchange for guarantees. It was at this moment that history took a different turn. When the annexation of Crimea by Russia happened in 2014 and the war in Donbass began, it became clear that the country had slept through and squandered its independence. Ukraine had the third largest nuclear arsenal but reduced its army, and the price of being unprepared for war was enormous. Ukraine is not alone. History knows other examples as well. Czechoslovakia, 1939, occupied by Adolf Hitler's army. Poland was conquered in 1939, just a few weeks after the invasion. In many cases, countries relied on diplomacy. But without sufficient military strength, diplomacy proves powerless. But that's not all, gentlemen. Paradox. When a state invests in defense, it actually creates a huge scientific infrastructure. Research laboratories, engineering companies, university programs, and technology startups emerge. And this is where something happens that no one expected before. Over time, many developments move into the civilian economy. Economists call this a technological spillover. It is exactly this that creates new industries. Human history is full of paradoxes. Does war destroy the world? Yes, of course. But sometimes it is military research that creates technologies that make this world more convenient and safer. The internet, GPS, modern aviation. But the main question, of course, remains, can we achieve such technological breakthroughs without the pressure, without fear, without an arms race, and without wars? Because real progress begins when technology serves not destruction, but the future. Do you think a country should spend billions on defense, even if there may never be a war? Or is that money better invested in education and the economy? That's all for today, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time.